Hey guys, welcome to the workshop. Today's video is going to be a little different and we're going to actually jump right into it. So I was made aware of a YouTube channel that did a reaction video to one of my videos. It's been a first for me. So his channel name is JoeEverest and he is a fence post expert. And he has installed fence posts for what it seems many years. And he did a review of my how to install a fence post video. So I wanted to do an update on that video at some point in time because there was a couple things maybe I would change now, but I'll explain those couple things as I do a reaction to his reaction of my video. So we're going to jump right into it and discuss it as we go along. I'm going to omit some parts because there's a lot of parts in the video that there's just some blank time of us watching it, and I don't want to waste all that effort and time, and I want you to go and watch his video as well. So some of the comments and things that he makes I will omit just so that you can go and watch it for yourself. So let's jump right into it.
So let's talk about hole depth real quick. So 24 inch is typically the minimum depth, and you want to go at least, depends on the area you're in, right? At least 6 inches deeper than the frost line. Now, this could be in the southern United States where the frost line is less than 24 inches.
Funny thing is, no, I'm not in the southern part of the United States. I'm actually on the East Coast, right in good old West Virginia. So, but this is how I've always done it. I grew up doing this with my dad too. We put in some fence posts around our yard, and they're still standing to this day. Um, Most of my posts were 24 inches deep, and the reason for that was because I bought 6 foot tall posts, and I wanted the fence to be 4 foot, so that leaves you with 2 feet. I could have went and bought 8 foot posts, done the still the 4 foot thing, and went deeper, but then I would have ended up with a lot of waste, and I just didn't want to waste any wood.
Typically, 24 inches is a good minimum. ASTM standard actually says minimum would be 30 inches. So
I
take
didn't
that
know that.
as you will. As far as the post width, it says 12 inches wide, which is a pretty good rule of thumb. It looks like he's installing 4x4 posts. Three times the diameter of the post is a pretty good rule of thumb for the diameter of your hole. So a 4 inch post would get you a 12 inch hole.
Okay, well that note there he said about your hole depth. Well, if you've watched this video, you know I actually did a 6x6 post. So based on that knowledge there, I should have probably went a little bit bigger. And the only saving grace on this thing, and I really haven't had any issues with this at all. It hasn't moved. This is actually the pivot point for a 8 foot wide fence or an 8 foot wide gate, and the gate itself does pivot on there, but when I close it, I have a deadbolt, so it's supported. It's not like held with a latch or anything, so there's not a constant weight on that, and that post ends up being more like a fence post versus the part of the gate. And I don't use that gate all the time either. So it hasn't moved. I haven't had any problems with it. So I would still kind of stand by that. But as a precaution, might as well just go a little bit bigger if you're going to do a 6x6 post. If you're doing the 4x4 post, like he said, I think that 12 inches is perfectly fine. Really liking his way of doing this, kind of having a positive spin on
Now he's
everything.
using post hole diggers, which are perfectly fine. We use those to clean out holes, but it looks like he's had several posts to set. I would probably recommend renting a digging machine, whether a pull behind unit like a groundhog or a little beaver, or you could actually rent a skid style digger like a Toro Dingo. Most rental houses have the Toro Dingos in stock if they're not out on rent already. They're really not that expensive to rent for the day, or if you've got a pretty big project, rent for several days.
That's an excellent point. A lot of times it can be intimidating to see these tools and go, "Oh, I don't know how to use that." Well, they are relatively inexpensive to rent from rental centers, and they'll show you how to use it. But the video only shows, if you look in the background, probably about 3 or 4 other posts. The funny thing is, I didn't do this. I did it all by hand. Did not use the tool. I actually ended up with like 30 posts that I put in. Dug all the holes by hand, by myself, all in one day. I mean, I really, I don't know. It's been about, what, 3 or 4 years ago I did that. And I just think I just rock and rolled from start to finish. I didn't really have any kids pulling from me as much, so that made a difference too. My 7-year-old was younger, but it was just one child. Now we've got two. If I was to do that now, it would take a lot longer, but I still would do it the same way just to save some money.
So this can go either way, right? So he's putting stones at the bottom of the hole. We've seen this in previous review videos. In the new
Okay, I'm going to stop the video right there because he's getting ready to talk about a topic that is definitely a debated topic. And it's all about, do you put anything on the base of your hole to set the post on, or do you cover the post with tar or black paint, something to kind of create a water barrier from the dirt, the earth, and the wood? There's a lot of debate. Of course, you saw what I did. I still hold true to that and still haven't had any issues. And going all the way back 30 years ago, my dad putting in fence, they are still standing there, not wobbly. And he did a different method, but still the same relative method I did. So for that conversation, I want you to go check out his video. I'm going to not include that in here because it's a lot of good knowledge that I don't disagree with. So I would like you to just go check out his video to see his full in-depth view of that question.
All right. So as these videos do, we're going to get into the conversation on concrete. Wet set versus dry set. If it's dry set, is it compacted and compressed? One of the benefits to dry setting posts and compacting them is that the post is ready to use as soon as you're done compacting it. You don't typically need to brace it up and wait for the concrete to cure. To each their own on the concrete. I mean, here's the thing, guys. When we get into this discussion, and I'll say it every time, if you've got a process that works for you, that's probably the best process for you.
So on that note, you'll see later in the video, and if you've seen my video, you know I pre-mixed my concrete. It was a bag. I bought the bag, basically a bag per hole is what I ended up doing, and I bought a 80-pound bag, put it in my wheelbarrow, mixed the water up, got the consistency right, and poured it down in the hole. And I've always liked that just so I know that it's wet and I know that when it dries, it's gonna be solid. My dad, on the other hand, about I would say more 25 years ago, when we did his fence post, he did the dry pack method, and he is right. We put it in there, and he packed it nice and tight. And the idea behind that is, as the Earth's water and the moisture gets into that concrete, it will harden up over time. But it does give you the benefit to be able to move on with your project. Now, in my case, I was not ready for that next step anyways. I needed to get wood, I needed to cut the boards, I needed to prep for that. So I much more preferred just to set the post in the ground, concrete them up, brace them up, and then leave them be to harden up. Because I had time on my hand. If you don't have time on your hand, doing it in a different method, like he's stating, would probably be a better fit for your fence and your plan. That's the same wheelbarrow that I made another video on how to replace the handles. These are the old handles. They're much shorter. Camera kept moving
So it
too.
looks like he's mixed the concrete himself. Well, they're in the wheelbarrow. So it's hard to tell whether he used it using individual pieces and parts, meaning aggregate, Portland, and then combining them together, or if he used a bagged concrete product. But he did.
Yes. To answer your question there, Joe, yes, I used a premix. Just much easier. Being a homeowner and only having certain limited times with weekends, that's just the easiest way for me to do it. And the way I did it, I don't measure out the water. I pour water in it, and I just do a little bit of time till I get the consistency that I want. That way you don't get it too soupy, and then you gotta wait for it to kind of solidify a little bit before you can actually use it.
It beforehand so that he knew what the consistency looks like before he puts it in the hole. That's good to see.
Okay, so there we have it. Got the post in the ground, it's level, and now all that's left to do is to let the concrete dry probably at least a day or two, and then I'll fill the dirt around it and pack it down. So here's a couple little tips when you're doing this. When you're picking out your wood, a lot of times the stores will already have this pre-sorted for this, but when you're looking, make sure you get ones that have the eye, the heart they call it heartwood, the center of the wood, because if you get one that's like that, it has less tendency to want to warp through the years. But if you get one that's got, you're more on the edges of it, don't bother picking that one up because it's going to warp quicker than the other ones.
That's interesting. I don't know that I've heard that piece of advice with the eye or the heart of the lumber being in the center of the post, preventing warping and twisting. I've typically always heard that it was due to one side drying faster than the other, but I suppose that makes sense though because it has more of a, I don't know if you want to call it a spine down the middle of the post rather than not having that dense support. Uh, Interesting observation for sure.
Yeah, to continue on that with that a little bit, basically as the wood does dry over time, parts of it are going to dry a little bit differently. So if you have that heartwood dead center of it and it's drying evenly around it, it's not going to warp and twist as much as you would have if you have it on the end. It's going to obviously change on one side more than the other because it's not even if you look at it that way. And all the posts that I did buy, they pretty much were that way. You don't really have to really overly worry about that. It was just a nice little tip. But this is pretty much going to be the end of me watching his review because at this point, at the end of the video, he gives some more comments and things. But the meat of it, the things that I would have changed or done differently, he's addressed, he's talked about, I've talked about, and commented on too. But there is still probably about 4 more minutes of this video left. And like I said, I would like you to go watch his video. It's a really good, informative video. Especially if you are out to learn more about how to do fence posts. So guys, thank you for watching this video. I really enjoyed doing this reaction, and I really look forward to doing more reactions just like this. Thank you for watching this video. I'll see you next time right here in the workshop.